All right, and there we are, live on Zoom, Susan, Michelle, and Myrna Stoller. Good to see you guys. This mic is all yours.
Thank you. Hi, this is Susan Michel here in Western Massachusetts with my good friend and soul sister, Myrna Stoller from Florida. I am the author of Surrender to Joy, From Suicide to Serenity, and I teach the transformational truth of A Course in Miracles in my book. Myrna is the author of Private Lessons with Jesus from A Course in Miracles, which I have been reading every morning along with my Course in Miracles lesson. And it's just so great. It just adds so much more clarity to each lesson. And this is what we're here to talk about, A Course in Miracles, which I have been studying for 33 years. And I believe Myrna has been studying it for about the same amount of time. How are you doing today, Myrna?
Doing very well. And you're right, we've been studying it around about the same amount of time. That's a long time that we had first met in New York City in a person's apartment. We gathered there. Some good minds came out of that. Yours, and Lisa Natole. Mine, I guess I could throw mine into the mix as well. But when I say good minds, meaning minds that are dedicated to A Course in Miracles, that stayed with it and practiced it.
Yeah, it's just amazing how we have all just grown closer to God over the years through our studying of A Course in Miracles. And it's just, and I'm so grateful that you're here with me today, Myrna, because it's just, it really helps me to remember how much love is available to me at each and every moment when I choose to tap into that love. And I think there is a discipline, a daily discipline involved. And today I am going to start with the paragraph on page 28 of the text, which is about turning this talk over to Christ consciousness so he can be here with us and channel his insight through us as we talk about A Course in Miracles today. So here Jesus writes through Helen Schuckman, I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. And what Christ is conveying to us in this paragraph is that no matter where we go, we are never alone. I mean, we do have the choice. You know, it's like I say in many of my talks, it's like the angel is on one shoulder, the devil's on the other. The Holy Spirit is on one shoulder, the ego is on the other, and it's up to us as to which voice we're going to listen to. You know, when we listen to the Holy Spirit, we feel at peace, we feel confident, we feel there's a lot of clarity that flows through us. And when we side with the ego, it's just a lot of convoluted nonsense. So we do have the choice at each and every moment, but it's important to slow down. It's important to breathe. It's important to remember who we are. It's important to trust. It's important to trust that God is always with us, that God is channeling himself through us when we allow him to. Trust, to rely upon spirit totally. Right, Myrna? At each and every moment, we have a choice.
We do have a choice, and we have to choose. We have free will, and we're given the wherewithal to choose between the two. So every moment we're choosing which way we want to be, which way we want to go. And depending on what we choose directs our path. That's all there is to it. We can continue, by knowing that we do have a choice. And only then do we then have to determine what the right choice is. Is there a wrong choice or a right choice? I'm reading a book now. I just ordered it. It's called Age of the Heart. I really do recommend it. And, he really put some amazing, thoughts. Actually, this is a book that was channeled through Sebastian Blakesley. And I was determined to now get this book. I read a little bit about it, and it really tells us that it's interesting. I quote some of what the book says. The call that created your existence was not a divine whim. It was the result of your own will to be. So how is this possible that before being created, you had expressed your will to be? Well, what it's saying here is that God didn't just decide, okay, today I'll create Myrna, tomorrow I'll create Susan. It was a matter of we put our own desire, our own will to want to be created. And so we were created in that respect. And then the question here is, well, so how is it possible that before being created, you had expressed your will to be? How could we have created or expressed our will to want to be before we were created? And it says the answer is simple. Your exit from all you exist from all eternity because it is eternal. So there never was a time that you did not exist. So even before we were created, because the eternal exists, there's just no such thing as nothing that doesn't exist. So on some level, we did exist. So because we're eternal, we existed anyway. And when God gave us that divine presence to become a part of the whole scope of the God consciousness, we agreed. I found that was very interesting, really, because there's nothing in this world that doesn't exist. And that is, yeah.
I've heard other, I haven't read that book yet, but I am going to order it because it sounds really amazing. I've heard other spiritual teachers speak about how we all made a decision that we wanted to be born into these bodies to learn what our soul needed to learn in order to grow closer to our true nature. So we chose to come into this earthly classroom to learn the deeper lessons, which is how to love unconditionally. And I do believe that in this world, it's a denser energy. So I think that's why a lot of us struggle down here. I was listening to A Course in Miracles on Audible today. I think it was on chapter 6. And Jesus was saying that it's hard, if not impossible, to find our happiness in this world, in this earthly classroom, because this is not our home. We can't find our happiness down here. We're here to learn lessons. We chose to be here to learn lessons, but this is not where our happiness lies. Our happiness lies in the kingdom of heaven, which is not of this world, but the kingdom of heaven is a state of mind. So we can access that place whenever we choose to go there. But our happiness does not lie in the world, because A Course in Miracles tells us over and over again, the world is not real. It seems very real while we're down here. I mean, here we were talking about in our pre-call talk, Myrna, today, I mean, today's lesson is lesson 261. There is a preview to lesson 261, an excerpt that says, "What is the body?" And Jesus Christ writes here that the body is not real. I mean, our body seems to be real. It's the only thing that we know when we're down here in this earthly classroom, experiencing life as we know it, experiencing the challenging situations as we know it. But in reality, the body is not real. It says here, the body is a fence the Son of God imagines he has built to separate parts of his self from other parts. It is within this fence he thinks he lives, to die as it decays and crumbles. You know, I went into the nursing home where I work part-time yesterday, and there was this one particular resident. You know, she's probably about 100 years old, or she was yesterday morning, and she's still pretty coherent. She plays bingo, and she's a funny, strong-minded woman. And when I went in yesterday morning, I learned that she had now. Again, when someone dies, we feel sad, because the only thing that we see this person as is their body. But in reality, I mean, she just kind of laid aside her body because her body really wasn't functioning that well anymore. And her soul went back to her true home, which is heaven. I mean, and to see through a person's external to the soul that lives within them is really coming from a Christ-minded state. Like when I look at you, I mean, you're so incredibly beautiful, Myrna, and I always see your package as just being so perfectly put together with your makeup and I mean, you're just a beautiful woman. And that's amazing. However, that's not who you really are. Who you really are is the essence, the spirit, the love that lives within you. And that's true for all of us.
I think you're not seeing my body, you're seeing my essence, and that's what to you is really beautiful. You're just projecting it onto my body. So I think that's the part that you really do see. You recognize my spirit. And I see you as beautiful too, but I love your spirit. So I think it's the essence of who we are that really show people, you know, we seem to think it's the outer core of who we are, but it really is the inner that we're showing ourselves to be. And of course we are, right? Aren't we showing ourselves? We talk about God. We want to live in the world, learning about love, going back to our creation, which is love. That's why we're constantly conflicted in this world, because here we are, you know, in a place of chaos. We put ourselves in that predicament many times, but that chaotic part of us is really doing battle with the truth of who we are. So it's as long as we're in conflict, then we are creating states of conflict which are not of God. So we really have to know, come back to the love of who, and that's how what we really yearn to feel. We want to feel love because that's what we are. And so the constant back and forth of wanting to know the truth, we want to know God, we want to know our heritage. And I think the fact that in this, and that's what this book, Age of the Heart, is all about, that we are coming into an age when we're finally getting it, that in this particular time and place, at this moment in time, we want to know who we are, and we want to know love, period. And while you're in a body, it's very hard to know. Well, you do know love in a body, but not true love. As long as you're an ego, you'll really never know love. We only know love when we are now first learning to understand what love is, and don't we feel God's love? We've opened our hearts up to wanting to know that. And I think that is the first, and that's what the Course in Miracles talks about when it says a little bit of willingness, because all you have to do is give God that little bit of wanting and desire, and that's it. The door is open. We can never go back. Never. We can fall off the path and maybe waver, but we're always going to get back on the path because we've discovered it. So I think we're in a very wonderful, wonderful place, and collectively we're adding to that consciousness that is now growing collectively, wanting to know God's spirit. And as a whole, we now recognize more and more we are the greater part of ourselves. Everything has a greater part of itself. Nothing creates itself, nothing.
Yeah, that's what Course in Miracles says too. We have to remember that we did not create ourselves. God created us, and we're never separate. We're never alone. God is the ocean, and we are the wave, but the whole power is available to us whenever we choose to connect to it, whenever we choose to remember who and what we really are. It's about surrendering our will with a small w to his will with a capital W. And it's just always there. But there is a discipline involved in connecting to it on a consistent basis. I mean, the discipline is doing the daily Course in Miracles lesson is really, really important. My morning meditations are really, really important, because when I go into my morning meditations, I kind of stop that nonsensical ego chit chat, which is just so annoying when I really think about it. It's just so annoying. But when I can really stop and just silence the negativity within my mind and connect to myself with a capital S, there's just so much peace, love, joy, and happiness available to me at each and every moment. I mean, sometimes I even remember the introductory paragraph that's in my book that was downloaded to me, I guess about 6-7 years ago now, because it really does make so much sense. I write, my passion is God. God is love and joy and beauty. So that means I am love and joy and beauty. He is all that is good in the world. Everything else is our own miscreation. When we are filled with joy, we are connected to God. When we are not joyful, we have lost our connection to all that is real. This is my message. It can be clarified with 3 simple words: surrender to joy. There is nothing to find. All we need to do is surrender. There is nothing to find in this world because there is no world. We need to, like, really metaphorically, click our heels 3 times as Dorothy did in The Wizard of Oz, so we can go home to heaven. And when she did click her ruby red slippers 3 times, she went home to Kansas in The Wizard of Oz, and she woke up and she saw her aunt and her brothers all around her. But the whole time she was there, like, she wasn't going anywhere. She was just going back to her true home. So that's kind of such a great metaphor for our own life. Like, whenever we choose to remember who we are, we go back to heaven. We go back to a place within ourselves that's filled with peace, love, joy, and happiness. But we're actually not going anywhere at all. We're just remembering who we really are. So it's not about finding, it's about accessing this state. And it's just a higher state of consciousness, that's available to us at each and every moment that we choose to tap into it. And then once I think what happens for me is, once I start to access this higher state of consciousness on a consistent basis, well, then the external world just kind of reflects that back to me. But again, the external world is nothing more than a reflection of an internal condition. So as I start to access that loving place within me, my life starts to change, but I changed on the inside first. It's not about changing the outside, it's about changing the inside. It's really amazing how life can just fall into place when we slow down and we remember who we really are on a core level. Right, Myrna?
Yeah, the voice of truth calls to the soul to love, right? You want we're constantly being called to truth now. So we want to acquire that truth, that knowledge, that feeling. You do it with meditation. I think that's great. It brings you into the oneness. It gives you the power to connect with God and find that truth. I don't meditate, but I do speak a lot to God. I do question. I do constantly state my feelings. I love you, God, because God has instilled that love. And when I say it, and my body illuminates, I just feel the love coming back. So for me, when I have that feeling, it's because I want to know who I am. And that's when we start asking, who am I? So now we're asking because we want to know the truth of who we are. Who am I? Am I an ego? Am I spirit? And that conflict constantly comes into play. But once we really know who we are and recognize the faults of the ego, that's really a tremendous step home, because God now will go the rest of the way. God understands that we're conflicted and that we probably spent eons and eons in this state, because when we were first became humans, we didn't know about love. We had no clue about love. And finally, God, as this book I told you about, Age of the Heart, well, God called on its creatures, on its little creatures to come home. And when that happened, some people, you start to hear the call, but that understanding of that call came through the ages. And today we're in a situation we are recognizing, knowing really who we are. We want to be there, but we fall off the path because the ego sometimes, we made the part of us that we've lived with for so many millions of years doesn't want to give up, doesn't want to say, okay, have you go home, I'll just step out of the way. It doesn't happen. So we have to detach ourselves from it, from the ego thought system. And we do it when we make a mistake, when we're being triggered, when we have an episode that doesn't serve us well, when we are not experiencing love, all those things that come into play. At least we know there's a way out, and we can step away from it. Do we always choose to? No, because we think that one problem is bigger than another. But the Course in Miracles says it's all the same. It doesn't matter. You
And
know,
also, A Course in Miracles is telling us not to fight with the ego, because once we fight with the ego, we give it power. All
yes.
we need to do is shine the light on the darkness, and the darkness dissipates. You know, it's like when a child is having a nightmare, all we need to do is turn on the light, and the child realizes that there's nothing happening, you know. Because I was talking to someone recently about, I guess, duality, you know, about, you know, traditional Christianity talks about God and the devil. Traditional Christianity talks about heaven and hell. Traditional Christianity talks about how we have to like stay away from the devil because the devil has a lot of power over us. And A Course in Miracles is saying, no, there is no devil. There is no negativity. There is no hell. The only thing that's real is the love. So we don't have to fight against anything. The only thing we have to do is turn on the light to remember who and what we are, to remember how much love is available to us at each and every moment. When we choose to connect to that, when we choose to remember who we are, there is no negativity. The negativity is an illusion. So lesson 261, today's lesson, because today's the 261st day of the year, states, God is my refuge and security. So it's about knowing that God is the only thing that's real. I will identify with what I think is refuge and security. I will behold myself where I perceive my strength and think I live within the citadel, where I am safe and cannot be attacked. So when we are connected to our true self, no matter what anyone says or does, it's not going to bother us, because our true self cannot be attacked, you know. And if somebody seems like they're attacking us in the external world in any way, all they're doing really is calling for love, because the Course in Miracles says everything is love or a call for love. If I'm connected with my true self, I cannot be attacked. And I remember times when I'm aligned with God, and people attempt to attack me, I don't take them seriously. I don't. But when I'm not aligned with my true self, when I'm aligned with my ego, and they attack me, well, then it really hurts, and I feel the need to defend myself. It's two diametrically opposed thought system. Two diametrically opposed thought systems, God and the ego. God does not know the ego, because the ego is not real. The ego does not know God, because God is real. Like, these two thought systems do not know each other, you know. And then it says here, let me today seek not security in danger, nor attempt to find my peace in murderous attack. I live in God. In him I find my refuge and my strength. In him is my identity. In him is everlasting peace. And only there will I remember who I really am, which is so beautiful. I feel like all the lessons are saying the same things in different ways. You know, it's just up to me to really absorb this information and bring it into the world and live it.
Yes, that's it. Exactly what you're saying. I mean, I related to everything you said, because it's true. When we speak in terms of A Course in Miracles. Everything we know, everything we speak about is truth. That's what drew me to the Course in Miracles to begin with, because when I first picked it up, I put it down thinking it was it was another Bible. I saw all these religious terms, but when I realized that when I picked it up again months later and started to get into the beginning of the Course in Miracles, at first we read, we read the was it 15 the miracles. It starts off with the 15 miracles. In any event, when I started it, cover to cover, really, when I picked it up and I read that first page, it drew me into the rest of it. And when I realized, oh, this is truth, somehow the words that I was reading in the Course in Miracles must have resonated to a time where I knew all of this was so. Because when we connect with the truth, we know it's so, and we're being told the truth. What can we deny? We know what truth is. We feel it. We know it. It comes in the form of a knowing. And when I started to get deeper and deeper into the Course in Miracles, I didn't understand it. The more that's why we dedicate ourselves to years of it, because it's not about understanding. It's all about doing, getting the idea that we really don't need to do anything either. We just have to let it happen. There's another lesson that says I need do nothing. So understanding, well, we can't really understand it because, we can draw concepts as to how we should behave, but until we start putting that behavior into our daily life, recognizing that we don't need to get triggered, because it doesn't matter, like you said before, what anybody does or says. There's a place inside of us that is just undefiled, that's so completely pure and so safe and so protected. And this is the place that we venture back into. And this is the place that I will eventually merge back into when I give up the ego. Eventually we all will. Only the time we take to do it is up to us, because we're living in a free will society. Everything that we do has to do with our own decision making, really. That's what God gave us, because when God created us to be free souls. So even as egos, God had to give us that privilege, that we had to now decide for ourselves where we want to go. And that's what the difficult part was, because if God had, really said, come on, you're coming home, enough of this, then we would have no choice. But because we really were given that understanding that it's only up to us to determine where we want to be and how we want to react to a given situation, how we want to feel. It's a choice. And once we dedicate ourselves to that choice, that there is a choice, and we choose the choice of peace, then it becomes easier. And then we become more God related, God connected. And then we kind of find it, then you feel safe. I mean, I do feel safe. I really do. Well, I say I feel safe. I do. I got into a little bit of a car accident last week, but it wasn't my fault. So that's what everybody says, right? But the insurance company agreed or deemed me not to be at fault. They read the police report. Anyway, so now I had to bring my car in for repairs, and they gave me a rental car, and they gave me every car that they offered me. I can't have it. They wanted to give me a Jeep. Then they wanted to give me a pickup truck. I mean, I only know to drive my little car, And now they gave me a car that I had no choice. I had to take it or nothing at all. And this, I looked at it and I said, this reminds me of a hearse, And when I got into it, I was very much afraid, because I'm not used to it. It's a big car, but it still drives like a car, doesn't it? What was I so afraid of? I only wanted to get home, because here I was, the fear that came into being, into what I really had nothing to fear. And as I'm driving it, it drives. So it looks like a hearse. What difference does it make?
That's
So
very interesting, Myrna. Very, very interesting. I remember when I used to travel a lot, I was always getting rent-a-cars.
yeah,
And I always felt the most comfortable in the rental car that was the most like my personal car because I knew how to operate it. So I would always want either a Toyota or a Nissan, because those were the ones that I was the most familiar with. And if I got a big car, I wouldn't want it. I remember once I got this car that was very like new age and modern, and it just had this button that you press to turn the car on, and it was in a real weird place. I couldn't even find the button. And when I think about it, I felt the most comfortable in the cars that were familiar to me. And I think that's how we all are a lot of the time. We kind of stick to the familiar, even if the familiar isn't the most empowering. The familiar is what we know. The familiar is predictable, and sometimes to make changes in our life, we need to go into unfamiliar territory, and we need to trust that God is guiding us, God is leading us, God is directing us. I'm thinking about this now as I talk, because I think I'm at a transformational time right now. And I think that it's kind of important for me to just take some risks, and sometimes taking risks is uncomfortable because we always like to stick to what we know, which is very interesting. Everybody, they say children that are with an abusive parent, when somebody comes and tries to take them away from their abusive parent, they cry, because even though the parent is abusive, it's what they know, it's what's familiar to them. We all have such a fear of the unknown, but I was also listening to some kind of like podcast about that, but I noticed that within myself too, that change takes courage. Change is scary. How are you doing with that car right now that is like a hearse? Are you feeling more comfortable with it, Myrna?
well, I drove it home, but you're right. There's nothing to fear but fear itself, really. I mean, that car, it's a car. It drives. It's, as I'm driving it, it feels comfortable enough to drive. But you're right. We don't like to get away from what we know, and what we don't know, is a we feel like we're stepping into something that we don't trust. So it's a matter of just trusting, like you said, keep trusting. Yes. And yes, will I not drive the car because I was a little afraid of it at first? No, of course I'll drive it. But, and that's because a part of me is saying how foolish. You're not going to get.
And that's why I think that's why people are also afraid of death, because death, I mean, I'm not saying, but people are afraid of death because it's unknown, but they say just to release your fear of death, because when we do leave our bodies, and everyone is going to leave their body at some point, the lady in the nursing home, Helen, she left her body, yesterday morning, and it was sad to hear that she passed. However, I do believe, as A Course in Miracles says, our bodies will be gently laid to the side when we no longer have use for them, and we will go on to a greater place. I do believe that. because nobody gets out of this world without dying. Like we're scared of death because we're going into unknown territory. I think that's why I've always been drawn to people and places that are in, the last stages of life, because I feel like it's such a spiritual time. I was a hospice volunteer in New York City for a while, and yeah, and I think just to release the fear and stay fully present in the moment is just so beautiful, and it's so transformational.
Yes,
So
everything you say is so, it's true, you know. Before, when I was talking about the Course in Miracles, when I first picked up the Course in Miracles, it was the meaning of miracles, principle of miracles. Anyway, I couldn't think of what it was that I was trying to relate to, but there were 50 principles of miracles. And that's how I started. And that's what led me to continue throughout the Course in Miracles. But yeah, what can I tell you? It's all a matter of connecting to who we are. But we have to know, have to want to know who we are first. And a lot of it, giving up a lot of the ego is uncomfortable, because we don't always want to give up that those grievances we have against certain people, and we feel so righteous, and that we're not giving up those beliefs, those untrue beliefs. It's hard to convince the ego that what we're angry at never happened. And in fact, I was on a Zoom session one evening on Gather for A Course in Miracles. It's an interactive with other Course in Miracles students. We interact, and I think it was Regis Reeves. He's really very good as well. He goes on just before me on Tuesday mornings at 10:30. I go on at 11:30, and he was saying we have to forgive what never happened. So if it never happened, what is there to forgive? Think about that. We have to forgive what never happened. That's a very hard concept for the ego to accept. But when we look at it, it's true. It really is. And you also just mentioned about where do we go when we die? Well, Thursday, there was another group session about that. Everybody had a different idea about where we go when we die. We all gave, and it's amazing how we all had different opinions, basically. And when I raised my hand, my explanation is that we just join with spirit. That's what we do. We don't go anywhere, really. We don't, our bodies, we lay down our bodies because we are not needing it anymore. It's not real. It just withers away, and whatever dies is not real. And then we just join with our higher consciousness, and everything depends on where we leave our bodies, what state we're in at the time that we leave our bodies. So if we're in a very low state of consciousness, that's what we're going to connect with always, until we, eventually we will all reach God consciousness. But the Course in Miracles says too that we could save 1,000 years. And that, I certainly want to save 1,000 years. That's a long time in ego time. It's not timelessness, it's linear time. So the Course in Miracles does give us that explanation that if the sooner we learn it, the sooner we get there. And, what do we say? If it's not love, it's fear. So it's when we direct ourselves in one of those two places. Do we want to be in love? We want to be in fear. Everything other than love falls under the heading fear. Everything, every other emotion.
Exactly.
Right?
Under the umbrella of fear, all those other emotions, anger, sadness, disappointment, jealousy, anything that's not love falls under the umbrella of fear. And basically miracles help the person that we extend the miracle to connect to love. They also help us connect to love. And what they do is they save time. Like, we're all going to get to that state of unconditional love. We're going to all get to that state of peace, love, joy, and compassion. We're all going to get home to heaven at some point. But why waste time? Why not go home now? Because, time can, well, I mean, when we connect to God, we're experiencing time on a vertical axis, right? We're just connected to God right here, right now. As we live in the world, we're experiencing time on a horizontal axis, but we can connect to God, on a vertical axis whenever we choose to remember who and what we really are. Yeah, I have the book, your book here, Private Lessons with Jesus, Myrna. I have your book open to the lesson of the day, which is lesson 261, entitled God is My Refuge and Security. And what you write is, with God, anything is possible. You have learned that God stands before you and beckons you to enter. When you are aware of this blessing, you feel a tender warmth building up inside of you. To rest in God is where all healing lies. How can you feel sadness when you are under God's protective guidance? Nothing matters in this world but to love God and do his work. You do not need to be a missionary or serve soup to the poor in order to satisfy his mission for you. To do God's work is to be free of fear and to trust in his love. I love that so much. It's to be free of fear and trust in his love. You want so much to connect with the universe, and I say this is possible. Remember, by trusting that God will guide you with further insights into a new reality, it will be easier to let go of past misgivings and leap forward without fear into all its glory. Trust that this is your mission, and what greater mission can there possibly be but to move towards your highest purpose? Love Jesus. I love the way your book reads. I mean, it adds so much to the original Course in Miracles. I read that twice. To do God's work is to be free of fear and to trust in his love. So when I'm afraid, I'm not able to do his work. But when I'm connecting to compassion, when I'm connecting to love, when I'm connecting to trust, then I'm able to extend his love through me to my brothers and be the miracle worker that I was born to be. I mean, it's just so beautiful and so clear what Jesus wrote, what Christ wrote through you in these lessons.
Yeah. Again, you're right. One of the things that really resonate with me in this is that how can we be fearful if we're trusting God? So if we're fearful, we're not trusting God. If I'm fearful about getting into a car that I'm not familiar with, because I might have an accident, I'm not trusting God, really. And I think if we trust God, then we are completely safe. Yes, I had a car accident, but it was a bad car accident. I had a few scratches. Nobody was hurt. It wasn't a terrible thing at all. But things like that tend to make us feel unsafe. But nothing really, since I look at myself, here I am. I'm going to be actually my next birthday is September 25th. I'm going to be 82 years old. And today I felt so good because I was in the order repair place, and they were the ones who I had to wait for Enterprise to deliver the car. And I waited, and there was a man, I was talking to him, and when I got the car, he said, so how many grandchildren do you have? And I said, 3. He said, well, look at it this way. All your little grandchildren can go into, plenty of room for your little grandchildren to go into, for this car. So I love that he saw me as having little grandchildren. I wanted to say, well, my youngest is like 30.
Oh,
And that's really, kind of made my day. But, the reason I bring my age up is because I'm still here. I'm alive. I'm well. Nothing happened to me. I lived for eons and eons. And I came into this world. I'm going to leave this world. And here I am still whole and pure and just as I was created. So what really is there to fear except the belief in, the ego's deceptions? And we have to know this. And even if we know it, we don't always trust in it. So trust is a very, very important concept. Because once we can start to trust, then we can let go. And I can think of times in my life where I've let go completely because I've trusted. And that's a wonderful place to be, really. I could give examples, but the examples are not really necessary. They work for me. And if you're fearful about anything, it holds you back. And sometimes with, fear is okay if you don't let it stop you from doing what you really think you want to do. That's another thing. You can confront the fear and say, okay, I'm fearful about this particular escapade that I'm going to journey on, but I trust. And you feel so much better about yourself when you get through it. And you realize that you did it. You faced your fear and you came through and you're better for it. And I can, again, think of various situations in my life where that has happened. So because I've had miracles occur, we all do. We open ourselves up to miracles, and we are now accepting the miracle, recognizing it for what it is, and then to extend it.
yeah, there was a book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I forget the author right now, but that was a famous book. What is fear? Course in Miracles acronym, false evidence appearing real. Yeah. I think it's I guess for me, I'm always doing my best to listen to God's divine guidance and how he is guiding my life. And God's divine guidance comes through me when I'm not afraid, when I'm connected to my love, when I'm connected to my compassion. That's when I can hear God's voice. So I'm always doing my best to still the negative chit chat in my mind so I can hear God talk to me. But again, who is God? God is me. I'm a part of God. I remember different times in my life where there's been fear in me. Once I was going in for an MRI and I'm kind of claustrophobic, and I kept chanting, this one Course in Miracles lesson. I want the peace of God. I am the peace of God. I am God. And by focusing on the fact that I am God, that I do have unconditional love within me, I started to feel it. And by feeling it, my whole body calmed down. I didn't have any fear left at all. I mean, there is a way that we can release the fear, and we can like tap into our God self. We can plug ourselves into our God socket whenever we choose to go there. There is, I guess, for me too, to speak from my own journey, there is a discipline involved, because I know what it's like to be overwhelmed by the ego and by my fearful self. And I also know what it's like just to calm down and plug myself into my God socket. So, and I think again, for me, discipline is involved. I had the definition of discipline taped up to my refrigerator door, I remember, for a while when I was younger. Discipline, training that develops self-control, character, and efficiency. And then I always remember Linda Goodman's love sign. She writes, strange that the word discipline contains the word disciple. I was even listening to Course in Miracles talk about the word disciple today. It was saying again in chapter 6 that to be a disciple of Christ, of Jesus, is so empowering, because to be a disciple is to be a follower. But if you're following a loving, compassionate role model, well, then to be a disciple of just this Christ-like state is so empowering. I mean, I think that's what A Course in Miracles is teaching us: to be a disciple, to be a follower, but to be a follower of Christ and nothing else. And when I can truly follow Christ, who I'm a part of, it's such an empowering place to reside in. And it's not following anything of this world. It's following this place of unconditional love that resides within each and every one of us. And and just to remember that when I am fearful in any way, I'm not in my right mind. But when I can really just calm down and trust my higher self, well, then I'm going in the right direction. It's just to I guess pause and reside in this place of peace, love, joy, and happiness that's always available to me. I'm just looking over here your lesson in your book. Trust. Your last sentence here says, trust that this is your mission. And what greater mission can there possibly be but to move towards your highest purpose? We're always moving towards our highest purpose when we're coming from a place of love and compassion. To stay in that place in love and compassion, it's just, again, for me, there's a certain discipline involved. So, but it's all good. It's all very beautiful when I can connect to that place. And sometimes, sometimes when I'm not connected, I just find an easy way to connect is to start giving. Like sometimes if I'm out of alignment, I've done this a few times lately too. There's been somebody on the side of the road, that's asking for money, and I just stop, at an intersection or a stoplight, and I give them $1, and I thank them for taking the $1, because I just want to give them love. I just want to give, because by giving, we remember how much is available to us. I mean, God doesn't need us to be grateful. God doesn't need our gratitude, but we need to come from a place of gratitude to remember how much is available to us at all times, to remember who we truly are. God doesn't need our gratitude, but we need to come from a place of gratitude to keep ourselves plugged into our God socket.
Yeah. It's Ho'oponopono. I like those. I use that as a mantra. Please forgive me. No, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And again, it has everything. It has all the components, those 4 words, those 4 basic different categories are really all connected. I'm sorry, please forgive me. It's, thank you. That's a form of gratitude. We're giving, yes, we're feeling gratitude. You're right. God doesn't need our gratitude. We're feeling the gratitude. And I love you. What could be better than I love you? So those various different ideas, I use them a lot. I say that now to myself sometimes. And I heard it once, really, and I liked it. I attached to it. So it's a matter of feeling good about yourself, knowing you're going in the right direction, never to chastise yourself, and to forgive yourself, and to love yourself, and to thank yourself. Really.
Exactly. Well, thank you for being with me here today, Myrna. I feel so much more empowered. You're so amazing. And it is now 4 o'clock. And as the introduction of A Course in Miracles says, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And what that means is the only thing that's real is the love. And I love you. Thank you.
Thank you. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan and Myrna. And we will see you tomorrow, Myrna. We'll see you tonight, Myrna, probably. And we'll see you Friday, Susan.